But when you really have ADHD, to be able to bring your user manual with you or to be able to talk about those struggles that you have, that to me is how you separate yourself from the rest of the, population who says they have ADHD. So that self advocacy can build that confidence.
Hello there. Welcome to ADHD and with Jorie Houlihan. I am your host, Jorie Houlihan. I am also an ADHD life coach, speaker, and your guide for the dopamine deprived. I am very excited to introduce today's guest. Heather Reddisch is the founder of Adulting 101 Masterclass and the Talent Maven, two companies dedicated to helping individuals and organizations thrive in today's evolving workforce. With nearly 25 years of experience in talent management, recruiting, and people operations, Heather has worked as an interviewer, a coach, a mentor, and a leader, giving her a front row seat to how careers actually unfold. That must have been so interesting. Her work consistently revealed a growing gap between academic preparation and real world workplace expectations, particularly for early career professionals. That insight led her to create Adulting 101 Masterclass, a program designed to equip recent graduates with practical life skills, professional confidence, and the tools needed to navigate both work and adulthood with clarity and resilience. A proud graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a mother of three, her passion lies in bridging generational gaps and empowering the next generation to reach their full potential and make meaningful contributions. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you, Jorie. I'm honored to be here.
You and I have spoken about the disconnect between these kids that are graduating from college and adulting. And we've talked about how much more it impacts young adults with ADHD and other neurodivergencies because of things like the executive skills challenges, et cetera.
Yep.
You add to that most ADHD kids have at least one ADHD parent who also struggles
Correct.
with those things, and it can
Yep.
feel like a lot of chaos. So I'm really happy that you are sharing your time with us so we can talk about what it looks like for these young adults going into the adult world, regardless of their ADHD status, and then
Yep.
explore how we can help our ADHDers with what they are probably going to struggle with. So let's just jump in. In your intro, you talked about what inspired you to create Adulting 101 Masterclass. So what personal experiences shaped your approach to teaching these life skills?
So I'm in an interesting time in my life as a mother, as I am watching my three daughters, and I have one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary school. And I'm watching them learn how to communicate. And it's so different than how we grew up learning how to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And so having this front row to their challenges on how to connect and have hard conversations and focus, right? That is so relevant to now the workforce, the Gen Zers going into the workplace. And for me, I'm watching and understanding how it really started. Before, I was just a Gen Xer who would complain about Gen Zers that they were lazy and entitled and not resilient. And the deeper I've gotten into not only the research, but again, being a mom and watching my kids, it's truly eye-opening. And I feel that it's the adults in the room, the Gen Xers, the boomers, the older millennials who are raising these kids. We have to help them integrate now into adulthood with realistic expectations.
Yes, I completely agree. I have just witnessed, which even with just my own kids, like I've learned so much from you. And then I start looking at what's going on with my kids. I'm like, we need to work on that. We need to work on that.
Yeah, yeah. It's the independence, it's
Yeah.
the confidence, it's being able to sit in a room and truly lock in and focus. And I mean, there's so many different facets to how they're growing up and what is normal to them, and then what those expectations are once they get into a workplace, and they're not aligned.
No, I agree with that. And so, Adulting 101, you cover everything from confidence to career skills, which is awesome because both are desperately needed. So, which area would you say your clients struggle with the most when they first come to you? And why do you think
Yeah.
that is?
I call my business the quarter life crisis business, where you know that this adulting stuff, if you will, is happening. The most common entry point right now has been they're either looking for a job for the first time and they're about to graduate college, or they are in the middle of their 20s and they're ready to make either a career pivot, or they want a new job. And because that's where my roots are, I have a
Mhm.
lot of knowledge behind that. But I do have students who have come to me just straight up for, I can't hit my deadlines. My manager is riding me. I'm about to go on a performance improvement
Mm.
plan. And, I just need help in somebody keeping me accountable, keeping me on pace, ensuring that I am using all of my tools the right way. So I have those students, and then I also have students who realize that they have to start supporting themselves and that mom and dad are no longer there to be the real backstop. So those are the main entry points. The career seems to be the most popular, but I have all different types.
So, you teach both emotional intelligence, which is, oh my gosh, so
Yeah.
much of that needs is needed right now, and resilience. And so, can you share a story where mastering these, or at least improving greatly in these, made a tangible difference for someone in one of your programs?
Well, to stick to the ADHD piece, this actually literally just finished up this morning.
Hmm.
But I have a student, a client, and she came to me because she could not hit her deadlines, and she would start her day and she'd lose track of time, and she never knew or understood or could figure out like how she was not getting all that much done during the course of her day, yet she was working till 6 o'clock at night, right? So
Hmm.
we put a lot of different processes in place for her, whether it was a whiteboard in front of her eyes so that, she knew some of the things she had to check off, whether it was the chunking the time, whether it was talking about how to prioritize. But she came in extremely defeated.
Mm.
And she was very concerned that she was going to be put on a performance improvement plan. And she had actually not shared the fact that she had ADHD with her boss, and she was feeling ashamed of it.
Mm.
And that's very common
Yeah.
for entry level graduates. Something that I talk about a lot is that those who have ADHD that are younger and, older, those who are in older generations have that more delayed diagnosis, but the younger generation is getting diagnosed pretty early, right? So there are a lot of supports in place that your elementary school, your high school, even your college can do and will do for you as long as you're resourceful, right? And
Hmm.
so there's a lot that you receive that kind of support. Once you get into the workplace, there aren't those types of supports. I mean, there are, but you have to really advocate. You have to be open about your challenges and your struggles. And so just building that own resilience and confidence in yourself of saying, I didn't get this right. And I know I'm missing my deadlines, and I know that I'm not prioritizing right. And I'm seeing all the writing on the wall. But how do I talk to my manager about this? How do I? So she actually, my student had a meeting today, it was a performance review, and we prepped up for the performance review, and you know, came up with a spreadsheet of ways that she could prepare so that she could come to that performance review prepared with, I know the areas I made some mistakes. I know the things that I excelled in, and this is what I see for myself for the next 6 months. And her manager was super, super appreciative of the work that she did up front. But
Mhm.
then in that session, she shared with her that she has ADHD. She shared with her that Vyvanse has been very hard to get, and it is super expensive. And she shared with her, her time blindness and some of these, multitasking and staying on task and those deadlines. And she just wrote me like literally an hour ago saying, my manager was so appreciative that I shared that because it answered so many questions in her head on why this was happening. And now they already put me in touch with HR, and they're going to help me in finding supports, whether it's someone like you that can continue to coach me or helping me with ensuring like I get my medicine. Her company could not have been nicer.
I
So,
love hearing that because
yeah.
yeah, yeah, that makes me so happy.
But
I've had
it took a moment of vulnerability, and it took,
yes,
it took discussing it, and she needed to like play it out and not feel like she's being judged, but also saying to the company like, I could be great. It's just here are some of my challenges and can you help me? And they've been awesome. So,
I really, really love hearing that because I can tell you right now, the majority of my clients still do not feel comfortable telling their HR because they are afraid that it will get them fired, even though that would be illegal, and they're afraid to ask for accommodations. And I'm like, but and to your point, you said, she said, "I know what I can be really great at if I had the right things in place," right? And so it helps everybody. It helps the company and it helps you being open about it. I mean, you don't have to
yep.
go around and scream it to the whole office, but
No.
like that, tell your client, I'm almost in tears right now because that just makes
No.
me very happy. Sorry.
No, no, yeah, yeah, but I was so thrilled for her because and she too, Jory, she's very emotional because she's so hard on
Yeah,
herself. And even as we were prepping for this performance evaluation, she was getting very emotional because she knows the challenges and there's some shame involved in it, which there shouldn't be. And
right.
then again, like she knows what she can be really, really good at. And it's about emphasizing those, like, what are your superpowers? I talk about that all the time is what are your superpowers? Whatever those are, and what I mean by superpowers are what are things you are in, like you said, you're resourceful. That is something innate in you that other people are not as resourceful. For me, I love the human behavior and I connect with people. Not everybody likes that or wants to do that. I am not good at numbers, but that's what you need to really key into, because that will also help with staying focused and understanding the bigger picture, if you will, is if you're elevating what you are naturally good at.
I love all of that. I think that and, I talk about it all the time on the show, I've talked about it with you, like, the more you understand how your brain works, right? Like, it took me forever to accept the fact that I am not a detail-oriented person, I am a big picture person, and at some point, I need to hand things over to somebody who likes the details.
Yep.
But I used to judge myself for not I just need to try harder and focus more, but that's not how my brain works, right? And when you start to see maybe you are the detail-oriented person, that's gonna help you find the right jobs for yourself, the right careers, right? If you're trying to
Yep.
pigeonhole yourself into something that doesn't fit, it's always gonna feel wrong,
Yep.
and you want a place where you can thrive, and the best way to understand that is to take the time to really say, "Okay, what am I good at? What lights me up? What am I good at naturally? What are some things that I really realistically could improve on that I also really enjoy?" This leads into my next question, which is, so career development and job search skills are a major focus, right? What is the biggest misconception that people have about landing their next job in today's market, especially when we take into consideration what we were just talking about. Because sometimes kids out of college, they think they're just going to get this like perfect job right away. And that's not always how it works because everybody has to pay their dues a bit. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I was just gonna say to you, it's never how like, your first job is not gonna be your dream
No.
job. It's not even close. It's not even close. You have to expect and it's funny because I talk about, like, internships and how sometimes I feel like internships are there's like they create these really meaty, interesting programs for the interns, and then the interns think that that's actually what their first job's going to look like, and it's
Mm,
actually not even close. Your first job is going to suck. That's the rite of passage of life. You are the lowest person on the totem pole, and there are a lot of things that are going on in that first year that you start working. First of all, you have to get comfortable with working 8:30 to 5:30 or 9 to 6 or whatever your schedule is every day for 5 days a week. And that is exhausting. And somewhere after typically like if I have grads who are starting in like June or July, their crisis starts at about September, October when they feel like they should be going back to school and they're not going
oh,
back to school. And they're like, oh my God, I still have to do this 5 days a week. Like the internship was over at this point, and now I was going to go back to like, there is a real moment of like, holy shit.
yeah,
I'm still here and I don't even know when am I going to leave. You are going to do the very basic work. AI is obviously helping with that, but there's always going to be someone at the bottom who needs to help support everybody throughout the team and throughout the company, and that's how you're going to learn. And so you're learning how to transition out of college. You're learning the 9 to 5. You're learning what commitment looks like. You're learning how to sit in meetings. You're learning how to communicate over email professionally, and you're learning how to network. There's so much that you're learning. Maybe you've moved to a new city, so you're just getting, yourself acclimated in a totally new city or maybe in a new apartment. There's so much going on that your dream job is that's not it. But what I do say is I try and say give it a year, no matter what. If you like the people and you like your manager, then for sure give it a
yeah.
year. If you don't like your manager and you feel like that your manager is not a nice person or really not nice to you, then I say all bets are off and you can make a change. But understanding that commitment, and if you see people in your company that are higher up and you're like, oh, I want to be like them when I grow up, then you know you're in the right space. Then you know you're in the right industry, whatever it is. But if you are looking at the higher ups at that company and thinking, I want nothing to do with that,
Mm.
then maybe it's not the right industry or role for you. So those are ways to look at it in terms of the dream job, right? It's not the one you're working in now, but is it the one that's 3 or 4 levels above you that you really are excited and would strive for?
I have already been trying to prepare Jack. I'm just like, dude, your first job's gonna suck. It just
Mhm.
is. And it's okay. Like, it's a rite of passage. The hard part with ADHD, and this is we need to be interested in it portion of this,
Yep.
because that can really make a job like that terrible. But what you said very much rings true, which is, jobs that I haven't loved, I love the people I worked with. And that's
Yeah.
what made the job. I was able to like that part of it, which made me stay and I did need to stay in some of those jobs. So that's one of the things to look for those of you who have kids who have ADHD, and this is gonna maybe a struggle for them. Have them find the things about their sucky first job that they do like, and then to your point, if it's really like a toxic work environment, and it
Correct.
and I want to be clear, that can't just be you don't always get what you want, like,
Correct.
yeah, because you're not
Correct.
gonna get what you want most of the time.
Right. We're talking like a terrible boss, someone that
Yeah,
makes you feel like they're talking down to you, they're making you feel little, that's where you leave. But
Yeah.
anything, yeah, anything that has to do with just doing work that you don't love to do, that's life. That's
Yeah.
how you, yeah, it's how
Suck it
you
up, buttercup.
learn. And suck it up, buttercup. But also, you know, you're going to have to teach the next person how to and the only way you're going to be, if you want to be a manager at some point, the only way you're going to be a good manager is if you've done all the work leading up to that role, so that when you are managing others, that you've experienced it. You're maybe the person who is the ADHD is the best person, because they're like, wait, this is a better process. Wait, I
Yeah.
could get to XYZ faster. Why are we doing, A, B, C, D, E? Like I can get to that much faster. And that's an incredible, use of skill too.
Exactly, and that has been me in some jobs I've had. I'm like, "Wait, why are we doing it this way?" Because 'Cause we're really good at pattern recognition, we're really good at seeing where there are gaps or
Hmm.
bottlenecks, right? And
Uh-huh.
so we can
Yep.
say, "Wait, well, but if we do it this way," and I consider that part of our creative problem-solving skills.
Yep.
So that is another component of this that I wish more companies also appreciated, was
Yeah.
understanding how neurodivergency can work to the company's benefit instead of always
Yes.
focusing on what they quote unquote can't do, right? So,
Yeah.
and there are
Yeah.
some companies that are actually really good about that, but I just wish more were a little more open to that process. So,
There's definitely a new kind of wave and a community of neurodivergent thought leaders that are on, especially on LinkedIn, that I see, who are helping educate. And one thing that I always suggest to my students is, people who are ADHD are actually very curious about their ADHD, and they know the areas that they need immediate help with, or to your point, like, they're resourceful, but they're also very honest when they're speaking about it, because they know that it not only helps them, but it helps others understand, right? So
yes.
my suggestion is always, why don't you give your manager a personal manual on yourself and how you work best, and the hours of the day you think you're going to be the most productive, and the types of projects or tasks you think that you should be taking on during those times of the day versus in the later hours of the day, if start losing the time, and then perhaps that there's other things, maybe it's meetings, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone is different, and you know yourself the best. But the best way for your manager to truly manage you is by knowing these things. So
Yes.
create your own personal user's manual and share it with them. And I bet it will help them tremendously, and you, in that job.
I love that idea because there are so many things that I think people with ADHD don't think about because sometimes they don't realize it's not a typical thing. Some of it, I have had to tell people, be sure that you tell your boss that you need things in writing. It can't just be you heard it because my brain, it doesn't work like that. Sometimes they're afraid to do it, but I'm like, no, just say, look, I will remember this information better can I put this in an email? If they don't do it, send them an email saying, this is what we discussed. Did I miss anything or whatever? Because then it's in writing. And then if they don't get back to
Yep.
you and it wasn't clear, then that's on them. But it's just a way of making sure you are getting the information properly. So
Process. Yep.
I love that idea of having like a little personal owner's manual.
Yeah.
I love it.
What you are saying is really important, because self advocating is one thing, managing up is another. And that is a skill unto itself. And not all managers have the type of skill to manage individually to their team. They manage the team as a whole. And managing a team as a whole is very, it's easy. It's that's what most managers think you're supposed to do. But when you're managing to the person, that's when you're really able to elevate them professionally.
Hmm.
But again, they're not doing that. So it's your responsibility to manage up and let them know how you can take the information in and all of that. So,
Yeah, I had to remind myself a lot when I was working for others that, like, most managers are th they didn't go to school to be a manager. They went to school for what they were doing, and they got promoted, and now
right.
they're a manager, and they have no idea how to do this.
Exactly.
And so sometimes we have to kinda help them along a little bit because 'cause they're clearly good at something that they
That's
did because they wouldn't get the promotion, but that's
well, you don't know that for sure. I mean,
true.
they might have been really good as an individual contributor, but they
Right.
might, you know what I mean? Like that that in itself is doesn't necessarily warrant you to be a manager. And then we can go into lots of managers have ADHD, right? And so they're throwing tasks at you left and right because they're not organized in their head. Having a manager who has ADHD and like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of late onset diagnosis now by the actual manager who wants to learn about themselves, but there's a lot of them out there that don't even know or have acknowledged this as a challenge, if you will.
They've had it their whole life. They've learned how to cope with it to a certain extent, but then when
Right.
you go into something that has that much more responsibility, et cetera, yes, exactly. That's a whole other podcast episode because
Yep.
that is a thing. Okay, so next question is, and this is something that I think is so, so, so important. So you offer training on basic financial literacy.
Yes.
People with ADHD, typically speaking, tend to have, well, not all of them, but a lot of them have impulse shopping issues.
Yeah.
And and part of time blindness is that the inability to see the future, so to speak. So when they're trying to save up for even just rent for that month, their
Yep.
brain can't get there, right? So what is a light bulb moment you often see when people begin to understand their finances for the first time? Because for a lot of them, it is not until they are living on their own.
Yeah. So discipline and consistency is really, really key for your finances. And I coach a student who we meet on a weekly basis. It's basically strictly finances. She has ADHD. And we literally go through together every single thing that she has spent for the week. And by doing that, she can look at her category and be like, I can't believe I just spent $200 in crystals this week. Like now I have like $40 in my budget and I could have had 240 if I didn't buy the crystals. Like sticking to a time where you are putting it in your calendar of your finances and going through it and knowing and reminding yourself every time I have to do this or else it's trouble. Because if you are looking at your categories and where you're really messing up, if you will, where you're going down, and listen, they find you on Instagram. They know what you want. Like it's so hard to say no after they've sent you the same, you know,
Oh,
I
I
say
know.
I say it all the time. Like I'll get something I'll be like, it found me. I didn't look. It found me. And like after enough times of seeing it, I'm like, oh my God, okay, fine, I'll buy you because you keep bothering me. So, but then the question becomes, how is that going to affect your budget? And people with ADHD also will see money in their accounts and think that that's the real dollar. No, it's not. You've got to immediately take out for rent. You don't have $4,500 in your account if you are spending $2,000 in rent.
Yeah.
It's being able to be consistent, especially at that age. Now you can get, um, certain apps that will help you, but you and I have talked about like, I think an app it becomes noise and you don't really understand or care to when it's dinging you and it's showing you have to commit the time to yourself to sit down and really lock in.
So that is where there's going to be a problem because I know that and they know that, but there is a disconnect between knowing and doing. And
Yes.
so, but what you pointed out right from the beginning of this was your client sits down with you every week. She's got external accountability, right?
Yes.
And you are
Yes.
forcing her to look at it in black and white. These are the numbers. There's
Yes.
no like fudging it. There's no, because we also tend to try and keep everything going in our head, which does not work either. So especially when it comes to money, some people are really good with money because they love it and it's an interest. And so they're really careful with it.
Right.
But way too many people with ADHD really struggle
Right.
with money. And
So,
so
external accountability. Find yourself an external accountability partner, whoever that might
seriously,
be,
I
and
have a
whoever
person.
that might be.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, getting a bookkeeper and you check in, you don't necessarily have to do it every week, but maybe in the beginning you do, especially if you're really noticing you're overspending and not watching where you're going with your money. I know somebody, she's a daily money manager, and she typically works with seniors to just sort of help take off that mental load as they're getting older. But I have sent her people, they're like, I don't know where my money's going. I don't know what I'm doing. And she just helps them with the day to day of it. And it just helps you because you're going to think twice. If you know, you got to say, I spent money on this and I know I shouldn't have,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
so to your point, when you know you have a challenge that you will inevitably drop like the ball, then building out somebody to help you with the accountability piece to it is part of your process.
Yeah.
It's just
Yes.
has to be that.
And that's again, that is when you really understand, okay, these are where my struggles are, these are where my strengths are, this is where my struggle is, what can I do to make this easier? Almost always external accountability helps. Like it scares us to death, but it is absolutely the thing that will change things. So, and money is I mean, I struggle with money my entire life because of impulse shopping, and you add to that the emotional dysregulation that comes with ADHD. And so you have a bad day at work, what do you go do, right? For a lot of people, they go out to
Of
dinner
course.
or they go out for
Right.
drinks or they shop. So just understanding what is at
Who
the root of
who
a lot of the spending.
doesn't? Who who doesn't?
So for us, it's even
I'm like,
worse.
check. I drink, I shop. I'm like telling myself you deserve it,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you've
yeah.
earned the right. Yeah, I
Yes,
know.
I deserve this.
I deserve this. Yes,
Yes,
of course.
exactly. But I also like what you said too about they see the money in the account and thinks that's what they have. That's where that time blindness comes in because you're forgetting that a chunk of that at the end of the
Is
month is going for rent. And so you got to put that money, just like get it where it's in some kind of savings or something that you
yes.
can't touch until then if you need to. But if you have the external accountability, that will rein in a lot of that. But it is a false sense of having money is what that is. So,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah, it is. And when you're early on in your career, it can be very confusing also if your parents are helping you in any capacity. If you are a parent helping your child out in any kind of way, my suggestion is if you're paying rent, then you pay the rent and you have your kid pay you, or you pay the rent and your kid pays the rent, because when you give them all this money to pay rent, if there's an ADHD challenge there, then they think they have all this money and then they don't. And then you get into real trouble.
Yeah.
So,
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
so
Yes.
be specific on how you're, or if it's just the cell phone bill, then pay for the like, don't make it a part of, because they'll lose track and not
Yeah.
understand
Yeah. They'll
when they
forget
have
what it's
all
supposed
this
to be going for.
incoming money. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Okay. So moving on to the next discussion, which is executive functioning. So executive functioning is it's a core part of your curriculum.
Yes.
And so how do you help these students build routines or habits when self-management isn't exactly their strong suit?
Yeah. So, and Jory, you can take this, like put this in the podcast or not, but I do like to talk about meds with them because if they do take if they do take meds, I do feel like that is part of them really helping lock them in
Mhm.
on their organization skills, their whatever executive functioning, whatever scheduling, whatever tasks they need to take care of. So, if you are somebody who does take medicine, it really does, in fact, help when you know during the course of a work day, you're going to have perhaps a heads down day of specific things. It is a tool in the toolbox to discuss and not be ashamed of, because it actually really does help. Now, if you do not use medicine and or right, there are a lot of different ways in which, first of all, you have to have kind of a come to Jesus with yourself on what you're good at and what you're not, right? And
Mhm.
so being able to, with your manager, talk to them about what the priorities are for them, what they need to see out of you, in whether it is just particular tasks or whether it's a project. Let them help you set those priorities so that you can check them off the list during the course of the day and you are meeting their expectations. But when
Yes.
you sit down at your desk and you're just starting a day and you don't know what they want from you, or it's just another regular day, you're never going to get done what you want to get done. So
Yeah.
let people help you in that way. And again, like, these are the moments where those who are more experienced around you, A, they want to help you. B, they might have very specific tools that you can use to stay on track. And they can talk to you about, let's just say, for some time blocking. The mornings are a great time for you to get your work done, heads down. The afternoon isn't. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. Having your manager work with you on what their expectations are for the days, and they can say, well, I'm not going to do my one-on-one meeting with you at 10 a.m. because I want you to get your whatever work. Let's do it at 3.
Yeah.
So again, to me, you're learning from your teachers, and use them as resources and opportunity to support you in the accountability piece, because as you said, accountability is everything, and somebody holding your feet to the fire is what is going to keep you organized and prioritizing appropriately and hitting the deadlines, knowing that you have to answer to somebody else.
I'm glad you brought up medication too, because, as you do, like I work with people whether they're on meds or not.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are very nervous about meds. They've heard stories. And I'm like, it's up to you. It's such a personal choice, right? Like you do you, but I want you to make that decision based on correct information. And there's still a lot of bad information. Like when I didn't go on it right away when I first was diagnosed because I'd heard stories of addiction and whatever.
Yep.
And then my friend was like, I think it's really going to help you. And, just you don't even need that much, but just try it. And if it doesn't work, then you'll know. And
Right.
it completely changed my life. I think one of the misconceptions about medication too is that it will quote unquote cure your ADHD, and it does not. I still have
No.
time blindness. I still struggle
Yeah.
with a lot of that stuff, but I can be present enough to say, okay, I know I struggle with this. So when I am trying to prioritize, I am being more realistic about what that looks like. And how I have described it to people is without medication, my brain is like dumpster fire anarchy. And I'm just running around putting out fires that I'm pretty sure I set. With medication, it's more like a well run 3-ring circus. Like there's still stuff going on up there. I'm not going to pretend there isn't, but I don't feel overwhelmed by it. It's easier to
Right.
manage. And some of it is
Right.
even vaguely entertaining.
Right.
So
Right.
it,
Right.
it,
Right.
it, it helps a lot. And there was something else you mentioned, the point about understanding too when your energy is best. That has been an absolute game changer for me because I used to just try to push through. And now I know that from 2 to 3, not the best time for me to be doing anything with details, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
4 o'clock, I get a second win, but morning is best because I've taken my meds, so they're in full gear. I've probably worked
Yep.
out and now I'm like ready to go.
Yep. Yep.
I would also recommend to people when they are trying to plan out their day to actually try to do it the day before, because I have found that
Yep.
I lose too much time if I'm trying to do it in the morning because I start
Yep.
to overthink it, etc.
Yep.
So that is
I
something that I really work on with my clients as well. This is something that really, like, everybody's
yes.
different, but I'm like, you got to give that one a go because it really
No.
changed a lot for me doing that too. So
Every night before bed, every night, I look at my calendar
yeah,
of what the next day looks like, especially what the morning looks like, so that I'm already mentally prepared. But I wanted to say something about you taking your meds or not taking your meds. And to me, it speaks to also anxiety, which I take anxiety meds. It allows you to use the tools in your toolbox. So when I'm not on meds, right? Like then I am a dumpster fire. And I remember one day my therapist actually she looked at me and she was like, "So when you're having an anxiety attack, what I want you to do is sit down and I want you to take a few really big deep breaths and then you can talk to your daughter about." And I looked at her and I was like, I don't want to swear, but I was like, "Are
it's
you out of
okay.
your like are you are, what are you even how am I'm not breathing. I can barely breathe now." And that was the moment for me where I was like, "Okay, I think I need to have some help here because I want to be able to use the tools." And that is what has helped me. It's the same thing with the ADHD. If you take medicine, it's not curing anything, but what happens is you are able to see and identify and then use those tools to say, "Okay, you know, I'm going to take care of it this way." And so it helps.
Yes, it does. And the other thing that I also want to mention that I forgot to mention before was I was actually surprised how much the medication helped my emotional regulation. I had no idea until I didn't. I thought I don't need to take my booster today, and I didn't take it. And we went out to dinner, and it was just like lots of people in it, and I was like, oh, I was so uncomfortable. I just wanted to
Yep.
leave. I was like out of my
Yep.
skin, and I was like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
now I get the emotional dysregulation part, and when I take my meds, those kind of things just don't happen nearly as often. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it does make a difference. So, we're not saying go out and get on meds. What we
No,
are
no,
saying
no.
is, like, if for those of you who've maybe not been sure and have been nervous about it,
Right.
there's a lot of benefit if you can take it and if you're willing to. So, I'm
Yeah.
glad that you brought that up. Um,
And one last thing I do wanna say about meds in general is it's a process. And the first if you do decide to take a med or try an experiment, just because the first one doesn't work for you doesn't mean that the drug doesn't work for you. It means you have to just commit to, "I'm gonna try to find the right one for me and see then if it will really work." But I think that people give up so
yeah.
quickly because how you're feeling or maybe it's not the right choice. And so, just, just know that.
Yeah, I was actually really grateful my therapist when I first started, I had an appointment with her, like, 2 days into it, and I was just like, "I don't know about this because I just didn't I was like, I wasn't really sure how I felt, and she
Yeah.
said, "Give it a week. I'm telling you by day 7, everything's gonna level out, your body's just
Yep.
adjusting." And
Yep.
I was just like, "Alright, fine," and she was absolutely right, that's what
Yeah.
happened. I was very lucky because the first med I tried worked, but I know so many people that they had to try a few and try different
Yeah.
dosages before they found the right fit. But again, like we've said, it's a tool
It's a
and
tool.
it is a tool. It can be a really beneficial one. And so don't not try it just because of things that you might have heard. Talk to your
Right.
doctor, talk to a
Correct.
psychiatrist, whoever, pharmacist
Yes.
even about
Yes.
your concerns. So,
Yeah. Yes.
all
Yes. Yes.
right. So confidence can feel out of reach for a lot of people, regardless of ADHD, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you help someone? Because self-trust is such a hard thing for us because we've been, especially for those of us that were diagnosed later, but even these kids that were diagnosed when they were younger, girls are still diagnosed way later than boys are. So that really, your self-trust takes a hit because you're told all the time you're doing it wrong, but you're just doing it the way your brain processes it. It doesn't mean it's wrong, right? How do you help people move from that self-doubt to self-trust? And what's like the first small win you sort of encourage them to try and find?
Well, the first thing I do always is normalize that this is something that most people, again, especially starting out in your career, everybody, challenges or not challenge, and everybody has their own types of challenges, right? So, but as you are growing in your career, you're learning so much about yourself. And the best way to learn is to make mistakes. And making mistakes is that the feeling that you get is so uncomfortable that what ends up happening is you're trying to do everything you can to not make a mistake, to avoid the feeling, but that's your biggest growth moment. And I really try and emphasize that those are your biggest growth moments of saying, okay, I tried this, it didn't work, I need to figure out a different way. And being vulnerable enough to take those risks, that then creates the confidence. And the truth is, everybody in the beginning of their career, everyone's trying to figure it out, trying to figure themselves out. The more you can get the reps in of having these difficult conversations or being able kind
Mhm.
of parlay on the difficult conversations is being able to tell your manager that you're scared to make a mistake. And having that open communication, those experiences, they build your own confidence. And you just got to keep putting yourself in those spots, even though you don't want to. And that's for most of Gen Z because our parenting for our Gen Zers has been now the wall backstop you at any given point. Like, honey, if you can't handle it, I'm going to take care of it for you. And so they have a very hard time believing in themselves,
Yeah.
a very hard time with their confidence and all of that. So, yeah.
It is a lot, and I agree that as parents, we can backstop them less, and also that fear of being open with your manager or whatever. The way I see it is, but I'm also speaking as a 55-year-old woman who's lived a lot of this.
Hmm.
If you tell somebody what your struggles are and they're a jerk about it, that should tell you something too. Is this a place you want to be at, right? Like, these are not your
Correct.
people. That being
Correct.
said, ADHD is an explanation, it is not an excuse. This is you explaining why you struggle with these things. You can't just say, "Well, I have ADHD. Oh, well, deal with it." That won't fly. You have to still manage how it how it shows up and so that you can work together, right?
The ownership is so key because I think if and now I'm talking generationally. If you go to your manager and say, "Well, I have ADHD," your manager is going to be like, "So does the world. So does everybody now." Like, there's no difference between you and everyone thinks that they have ADHD. But when you really have ADHD, to be able to bring your user manual with you or to be able to talk about those struggles that you have, that to me is how you separate yourself from the rest of the, population who says they have ADHD. So that self advocacy can build that confidence and also really show your manager that this is something that you're challenged with and you know how to help yourself, and they'll take it seriously then for you too.
Yes. When you can show that you are taking it seriously, that you are taking the job seriously, and that's why you've put together this whole manual for them, that's gonna go way further than the person who's like, "Oh, I have ADHD," and who knows if they really do or not, right? Like, it is so important to take ownership of it. Like you said, it's vital, really. Alright, so you offer both one-on-one coaching and corporate training. So
Yep.
what are key similarities and differences in how you approach those different audiences?
Well, the one on one coaching is very customized on the student that I'm working with and what their particular challenges are, whether they're facing the job search or they're struggling in their current job. This is a very customized approach to help them build their confidence and such. The corporate training is me going in and really just talking about what the expectations are for Gen Z in the workforce. And I discuss the generational differences and why these expectations are what they are, and just providing some foundational skills so that the company doesn't have to necessarily be the bad guy, and but also they want to know, they want to learn, they want to be at their best. And so really spelling it out, which is very important to Gen Z, is explaining the why and why this is so important and why this matters. My corporate training is, receiving and giving feedback, how to manage up your personal brand, how to network, within your company or building relationships, how to appropriately talk through email and text and professionally. So that's my corporate side.
Okay, awesome. I love that. If we can all just find a way
Thanks.
to kind of work together like that, it's
Yeah.
just so we're all on the same page. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay, so it is time for the rapid fire round. I am going to give you a few questions and just answer whatever comes top of mind. All right,
Great.
you ready? All right.
Yes.
What is one adulting skill everyone should know, but hardly anybody does?
Oh, God. What's one adulting skill that everybody knows?
Or,
Having difficult conversations, moving through
yeah,
in person, not on text, n not on a phone,
yeah,
in person,
yeah.
or
Nobody
on
does
the
that
phone.
anymore.
No, everybody wants to use their phones, and, if you have to pick up the phone, I much prefer you pick up the phone than pick up the text. So,
Yes.
the talking, it's, you know, it's just it makes such a difference. It makes a difference in the relationships with people. It makes a difference on what you say. People are way too keyboard, courageous when they're texting something to a friend versus actually saying it to their face.
Yeah, I agree. The keyboard warriors. Okay, next question. Which life skill do you secretly find the most fun to teach?
The confidence. I love helping people to build their confidence and talk to older, more seasoned executives that they would never want to do. And when they do, they are so proud of themselves and feel like they've learned so much, but yet wouldn't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole if there wasn't someone nudging them to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, I love the teaching confidence thing too. I love empowering people.
Yes,
They're empowering
empowering.
themselves. I'm just helping them
Yes.
find that, you know?
Find it. Yes.
Yes.
I
Okay,
love it.
what is a surprising way your own daily routine has changed since starting Adulting 101?
Oh, I I am so mindful of conversations with people now, and really trying to lock in and be present and listen. I talk a lot about listening, over talking. And I tell my students all the time, if you're sitting down with an executive, just don't even talk. And they'll think it's the greatest conversation ever. And you'll
Yeah.
get off and be like, I didn't say 3 words, but they thought it would, and you've all of a sudden gone to whatever next round. The listening and it's important. And I try and exercise what I tell other people to do.
I heard this phrase once and I thought I have to remind myself of this regularly. It is we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. We should
Yeah.
listen twice as much as we speak. And I have to remind myself of that because I am a chatty Cathy.
Me
Okay.
too. Me too. 100%.
All right. Coffee, calendar, or to-do list, which do you rely on most?
My calendar is my everything.
Yeah.
I would be nowhere without my calendar all the time.
Yeah. Okay, and this is the last question. If you could put one Adulting 101 lesson on a billboard for the world to see, what would it say?
Be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Oh, I love that. It is so hard being uncomfortable, but it's so important to learn.
It's
A
all
tr
growth.
Yeah,
Anytime you make yourself uncomfortable, you're growing.
agree.
When you're comfortable, you're stagnant, and nothing big and exciting and incredible is going to happen by you being comfortable and stagnant. So,
Well, I think that is an amazing way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing your time and your wisdom and all of it with us. This has been really educational for me too. So I really
thank
appreciate you
you.
taking the time.
You
So,
too. You
h-
too.
Thank you. How can people find you?
Well, I have a website, Adulting 101 Masterclass. I'm on Instagram. I try to be on TikTok and the others, and I am on Facebook too, Adulting 101 Masterclass. I am on LinkedIn as Heather Reddisch. So you can always link in with me too. So those are all the ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Okay, I will be sure to have Heather's information in the show notes. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If this episode resonated with you, I would love it if you would like the show and leave a review. The more people who do this, the more ADHD women we can help. And if you are tired of trying to manage your ADHD on your own, I do work with clients one-on-one. The link to apply for a clarity call to see if we're a good fit is in the show notes as well. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And until next time, you know what I say, stay curious.